January 30, 2024, News Report 1. On January 29, the Government of British Columbia, Canada, announced the suspension of approval for new international student admissions to post-secondary institutions. This measure will be in effect until February 2026. The government also requires private training institutions to set higher language proficiency standards and imposes stricter criteria for labor market demand and degree quality. This is part of Canada's efforts to slow down the growth in the number of international students. Last year, the Canadian government approved 1 million international students, triple the number from a decade ago. This significant increase has led to housing shortages and affordability issues in Canada. In December, national rents in Canada increased by 7.7% year-on-year. In December 2023, the Minister of Immigration in Canada announced a doubling of the financial proof required from international students to $20,000 Canadian to ensure they can afford housing and living expenses. As of January 22, the Canadian Immigration Department stated a 35% reduction in student visas over the next 2 years, with this year's target set at 360,000 undergraduate student visas. Canada is tightening its student policies due to housing shortages. News Report 2. On January 30, Hong Kong Chief Executive Carrie Lam announced the initiation of a 30-day consultation on legislation for Article 23 of the Basic Law. Article 23 prohibits acts of treason, secession, sedition, subversion against the Chinese government, and theft of state secrets. The Hong Kong government attempted to enact Article 23 in 2003, facing strong opposition with 500,000 citizens protesting, ultimately leading to the withdrawal of the legislation and the resignation of then-Chief Executive Tung Chee-hwa. Despite previous failures, the Hong Kong government, under Chief Executive Carrie Lam since 2022, pledged to complete the legislation of Article 23 by 2024. On January 30, the government released a consultation document that added 5 new national security offenses, including treason, sedition, incitement to sedition, theft of state secrets, and engaging in activities undermining national security overseas. Scholars noted that this legislation aligns with China's national security laws, Xi Jinping's national security concepts and definitions, as well as the scope of state secrets and anti-spying laws. Different from the 2003 legislation, the current consultation document omits the provision allowing Hong Kong citizens to use public interest as a defense, indicating stricter legislation compared to 2003. After Carrie Lam initiated the consultation on Article 23 legislation, the Hong Kong stock market experienced a significant decline, with Tencent stock dropping by 400 points, closing at 15,703 on January 30, down 373 points, with a turnover of $90.8 billion. This situation has raised concerns about Hong Kong's economic prospects. News Report 3. Sky News reports that U.S. President Biden authorized military action in the Middle East on the evening of January 29. Currently, 6 U.S. Air Force KC-135 tanker aircraft have arrived in the Middle East, increasing the likelihood of U.S. airstrikes within the next 24 hours. With the ability for aerial refueling, U.S. fighter jets are expected to reach the Iranian capital, Tehran. However, it is widely speculated that potential U.S. targets may be military objectives in Iraq or Syria. On January 27, a U.S. military aircraft fleet in Jordan was targeted by drones, resulting in 3 deaths and 40 injuries. The Islamic Resistance Movement in Iraq claimed responsibility for the attack, stating it was supported by Iran-backed military organizations. Pentagon spokesperson Singh, 129 stated that the U.S. holds Iran responsible for sponsoring, training, and supporting militia groups in Iraq and Syria. While the U.S. wishes to avoid an escalation of conflict in the region, a response to the attack is deemed necessary in terms of timing and location. This marks the first time since the Hamas conflict that U.S. soldiers have faced casualties. Additionally, as it is a U.S. election year, with President Biden seeking re-election, the attack on U.S. military bases, resulting in casualties, brings political pressure. Suvan Center's research director, Sukrak, stated that Biden has no choice but to respond to avoid political pressure from the Republicans. Despite not being the desired action, Biden faces domestic pressure and must take action. In choosing a course of action, he still faces some dilemmas. News Report 4. The Philippine Daily Inquirer reports that Philippine President Marcos visited Vietnam on January 30 and held talks with Vietnamese President Nguyen Van Tang and Prime Minister Pham Minh Chinh. Both countries signed documents agreeing to enhance cooperation between their coast guards to prevent accidents in the South China Sea. Marcos stated that Vietnam is the Philippines' only strategic partner in Southeast Asia, and maritime cooperation is the cornerstone of their relationship. Prime Minister Pham Minh Chinh, while discussing this cooperation, noted that the world and regional situations are undergoing rapid and complex changes. He emphasized that Vietnam and the Philippines will need closer unity and cooperation, especially given the sovereignty disputes with China in the South China Sea. The strengthened cooperation in Coast Guard defense between the Philippines and Vietnam is seen as putting pressure on China. This move reflects the desire of regional countries to enhance cooperation to maintain stability and security in the context of the South China Sea disputes. The sovereignty disputes in the South China Sea have been a hotspot in the Southeast Asian region, and countries seek to address differences through dialogue and collaboration. News Report 5. A public hearing on Canadian elections took place in Vancouver on January 29, lasting for 5 days. The hearing primarily explored how to handle issues related to national security and classified information, focusing on understanding the restrictions on this information and finding ways to make it public. The main purpose of this hearing is to search for evidence and information on foreign interference in Canada's democratic system, with a specific focus on China. Officials participating in the hearing include Canadian Minister of Internal Affairs LeBlanc, the Director of the Canadian Security Intelligence Service, CSIS, Vignault, and the Deputy Director of the Communications Security Establishment, CSE, Taib. The chair of the Foreign Interference Investigation Committee, HOG, stated during the hearing that foreign interference in Canada's democratic system is an extremely serious issue, requiring thorough investigation, analysis, and reflection to determine the most effective countermeasures. The hearing will continue from February to March, including fact-finding sessions and policy recommendation hearings, aiming to gather witness testimonies and provide decision-making advice to the government. According to a confidential report cited by the Globe and Mail in February 2023, China was suspected of interfering in the past 2 Canadian elections, including secretly funding Canadian politicians and supporting pro-China candidates. In May 2023, Canada expelled a Chinese diplomat, leading to reciprocal expulsions by China. Initially reluctant to publicly investigate, the Canadian government faced widespread criticism, leading to the establishment of the Foreign Interference Investigation Committee, with Justice Hogg appointed as its chair. The initiation of this public hearing demonstrates the Canadian government's commitment to addressing foreign interference issues. News Report 6. Transparency International released the 2023 Global Corruption Perceptions Index on January 30. The index ranks 180 countries based on data from 13 databases, including the World Bank and the World Economic Forum, measuring the extent of corruption in each country's government. Denmark topped the list as the least corrupt country for the 6th consecutive year, followed by Finland, New Zealand, Norway, and Singapore. China ranked 79th among the 180 countries, indicating a relatively serious level of corruption. Transparency International's Corruption Perceptions Index uses a comprehensive assessment of multiple data points. However, some scholars question its effectiveness. Li Hengqing, a scholar at the U.S. Institute for Information and Strategic Studies, stated that the Corruption Perceptions Index cannot fully represent China's corruption level since corruption is challenging to quantify. He likened it to economists modeling market value by reducing a company's monetary data, a method that may not accurately reflect the reality. Li Hengqing pointed out that Xi Jinping's anti-corruption efforts in the past 15 years are, in reality, a selective anti-corruption campaign and a political tool. He believes China's current corruption issues surpass those of the past, involving substantial amounts of funds. He also stated that the West may not fully grasp China's corruption issues, and China's corruption standards are challenging to understand in the West. Therefore, he argued that the Corruption Perceptions Index is not suitable for China, and corruption issues should be considered from a more comprehensive and local perspective. News Report 7. On January 30, China's Ministry of State Security released an article on WeChat titled, "Listen to Advice, Don't Let National Security Agencies Invite You for These 10 Cups of Tea." The article lists 10 situations that could lead to individuals being invited by national security agencies. The first, cup of tea, involves suspicion of crimes endangering national security, leading to a criminal investigation, including measures like arrest, detention, and interrogation. The second, cup of tea, concerns engaging in espionage activities or providing assistance, such as supplying information, funds, materials, labor, technology, premises, or harboring and abetting. The third, cup of tea, refers to failing to implement the main responsibility for counter-espionage security. The fourth, cup of tea, relates to violations in construction projects involving national security matters. The fifth, cup of tea, involves refusing to cooperate with investigations into espionage activities. The sixth, cup of tea, relates to illegally obtaining or holding state secrets, such as documents, data, materials, or items. The seventh, cup of tea, pertains to the illegal production, sale, possession, or use of espionage equipment. The eighth, cup of tea, involves leaking state secrets related to counter-espionage and intelligence work. The ninth, cup of tea, refers to violating decisions on exit deadlines, and the 10th, cup of tea, concerns engaging in activities harmful to national security beyond espionage. The article's publication aims to emphasize the determination of the Ministry of State Security to maintain national security and remind citizens to abide by laws and regulations. Some commentators may view this approach as indicative of the Ministry of State Security's perceived role as a supergovernment entity that autonomously determines laws and enforcement rules. News Report 8. A massive explosion and vibration were reported in Shanghai's Songjiang district at 7:30 p.m. on January 29. Local residents stated that entire buildings were shaking, and the floors were vibrating. The Emergency Management Bureau denied an explosion but did not specify the source of the loud noise. Blue Ship Aviation, in an interview with Caixin, stated that they conducted an outdoor low-temperature explosion experiment on the night of January 29, resulting in some damaged glass and injuries to 3 employees. Shanghai residents questioned why the experiment was not communicated in advance if it was a normal procedure. Some citizens questioned why the sound was so loud if only glass was damaged, and the entire Songjiang district could hear it. They called on the Emergency Management Bureau to provide an explanation to the public instead of concealing the facts. Blue Ship Aviation is a private rocket-carrying company established in 2015, with a laboratory in Songjiang primarily focused on the development of the G60 satellite constellation, similar to Elon Musk's Starlink, providing low Earth orbit satellite and broadband services. The company admitted to the experiment a day later, but citizens noted that, at least, they acknowledged it, possibly because being a private enterprise, they couldn't withstand public scrutiny. News Report 9. Reuters reports that the U.S. Department of Justice and the Federal Bureau of Investigation have successfully disrupted the activities of a Chinese hacking group through remote means. The hacking group, known as Volt Typhoon, had been active since May 2023 and gradually attracted the attention of Western countries. Volt Typhoon had implanted malicious software in the telecommunications systems and routers of Western countries, targeting sectors such as communications, utilities, manufacturing, transportation, construction, maritime, government information technology, and education. The group even targeted the U.S. military base in Guam. According to Western intelligence, Volt Typhoon is a hacking group supported by the Chinese government. In China, all hacking groups are considered government-supported, as the Chinese government does not tolerate independent hacking organizations. This is similar to the relationship between Chinese organized crime and government officials, where all criminal organizations in China are associated with government officials and receive government support. The successful action by the U.S. Department of Justice and the FBI indicates a strong stance by Western countries against cybersecurity threats, especially those originating from China. This also reflects the international competition and disputes in cyberspace, as well as the measures taken by countries to protect their information infrastructure. News Report 10. French magazine, Focus, published an interview with Hungarian Prime Minister Orbán on January 30. Orbán stated that he is ready to compromise with the European Union, agreeing to the EU providing $540 billion in financial aid to Ukraine. Orbán pointed out that he was forced to make this compromise because if Hungary does not agree to support Ukraine at the EU summit on February 1, EU leaders will propose an alternative plan. If the alternative plan is accepted, the other 26 countries will sign agreements with Ukraine while simultaneously stopping EU funds to Hungary, potentially affecting Hungary's trade agreement with Russia. The background behind this compromise is the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Orbán has maintained close contact with Russian President Putin and supported Russia behind the scenes. This situation may have put pressure on Orbán, prompting him to compromise to safeguard Hungary's position and interests within the EU. News Report 11. According to Agence France-Presse, North Korea launched cruise missiles into its western sea on the morning of January 30. This marks the third time in a week that North Korea has conducted cruise missile launches. Prior to this, North Korea fired 2 cruise missiles, one known as Arrow 3, into the Western Sea near Pyongyang on January 24 and 2 more, also Arrow 3 cruise missiles, near Sinpo City on January 28. According to the Korean Central News Agency, KCNA, these missiles flew for 2 hours over eastern waters and successfully hit their targets. However, the South Korean military believes that North Korea's use of the same type of cruise missiles in different locations may indicate a change in launch platforms. This operation, involving launches in different locations within a short time frame, requires highly sophisticated technology. Additionally, due to North Korea not disclosing specific parameter information, some observers believe that North Korea may be exaggerating the actual level of its cruise missile technology. This series of missile launches has raised concerns in the international community, as it may violate UN Security Council resolutions. News Report 12. The U.S. Department of Justice announced on January 29 that Attorney General Garland would undergo surgery on February 3. The surgery, lasting 90 minutes and performed under general anesthesia, is a minimally invasive procedure, and Garland is expected to return home the same day. During the surgery and recovery from anesthesia, Deputy Attorney General Monaco will assume Garland's responsibilities. White House Deputy Spokesperson Dalton stated that the White House has established new protocols to ensure that heads of government departments promptly inform the White House in case they are unable to fulfill their duties. Garland's notification follows this new protocol to maintain transparency and provide information to the public. The background for creating this new protocol is Defense Secretary Austin's secrecy about his health condition. Austin was hospitalized for 3 days starting on January 1 but only informed the White House on January 4. This behavior caused dissatisfaction at the White House, leading to the establishment of the new protocol, requiring senior officials to promptly report health issues when they cannot perform their duties.